lot of believers, not all, but there are many. There are many who are not faithful, to the Lord in these matters, or even to the husbands after marriage, some of them. That's the saddest thing.
What is the first statement? Physical? First statement you said?
First statement? What was it?
As soon as we read this, you said physical intimacy equals to something you said?
Yes, the physical intimacy is equal to total identification. Total identification. Yeah. God has established marriage as the ideal of the Christ-church relationship, right? That's the type. Actually, the only relationship that reflects the Christ-church relationship is the husband-wife relationship. So, even that analogy itself tells us that how holy that is before God, how God views this institution. It's such a holy relationship. It's not to be taken lightly. Never. Never. When someone is, someone is entering into marriage and someone is officiating at the marriage relationship and all, it's so holy and it's such a sacred relationship, sacred relationship. Paul has removed the curtain in Ephesians 5. From Adam and Eve, so many marriages. So many marriages have taken place. Then one day, Paul was celebrating a marriage, and Paul said, "For this reason shall a man leave his father and mother and shall be united with his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. But this I say concerning." So the bride and the groom, they were sitting here. There was a big drapes, and Paul just pulled the drapes up. Who's sitting there? Christ and the church. Just behind the couple, behind the husband, Christ, behind the bride, the church, Christ. Paul looked up, taken his fingers and said, "I'm speaking about that. So far I was speaking about this, but now I'm speaking about that, Christ and the church." This is just a miniature of that great reality. And if this is now not a holy relationship, this is both are not faithful and abused and they have gone to prostitutes, this and that, and they cannot represent Christ and the church. So shameful, so shameful. People take these things so lightly. This is Krishna ethics. This is Krishna ethics. Every husband ought to sanctify his wife. Every wife ought to sanctify her husband. In Thessalonians said that every man possesses his own vessel in honor. That vessel could be his body or that vessel could be his wife. You take it either way. It has to be held respectfully. I must keep my body respectfully because this body is not mine. This body represents my Lord Jesus Christ. And this body belongs to my wife. So how carefully I must treat the passions of my body. That's what that you cannot take the body of Jesus Christ and make it, identify it with an immoral person. No. Verse 18 says, because we are already united with Christ, we cannot join immoral people. Verse 19 says, our body is the temple of God. God owns it. for he has bought it with a great price. So the ethics of regeneration has great implications. We cannot behave in any way we want. We need to behave responsibly. And if we behave responsibly, God is going to deal with us. Said that He will destroy. He will destroy. Adultery and sexual sins destroy the institution of family. To get good children, they must come from good people. Immoral people can never have blessed family life. Blessed children, blessed family life. No. Your unmarried state must be kept pure. Now, if you are not a believer at that time, God forgives, God washes. But if you are a believer in your unmarried state and you did not keep it pure, well, you definitely have to pay a price unless the Lord is gracious to you. Yes. A lot of young people, young Christians, they take their unmarried state lightly, mess around girls, mess around boys, and this and that, and they say, it's okay, some fun. No, sir, no. No, your body is the temple of God. You hold your bodies so dearly as the temple of God and keep it clean, pure in thought life and in every respect, and you enter into your marriage, in that clean atmosphere, how much God will bless you. Yes, definitely. So Christian ethics is the ethics of Jesus Christ. It is. You have anything to ask? You have anything to ask?
So in the Bible, you were mentioning about various examples which God has not approved. But how does we learn the principles from them? So for example, a person, because of the vow he made, has to sacrifice for his daughter.
The question is asked, the question is asked from Jephthah. Yes. What was the vow Jephthah had taken? Did Jephthah sacrifice his daughter? That's a greatly debated issue, to be honest. I personally believe no. No human sacrifice in the history of Israel. Even God asked Abraham, but right before execution said, do not lay your hand on. So I believe that in the case of Jephthah, the daughter was given for services in the tabernacle as a virgin. So she requested to weep about her virginity. She wanted to get married, but she couldn't. So she requested, can I get some months where I will go with my friends and weep over my virginity? Which he granted. Then at the end of that one, she was sent to the temple, I believe. There were many virgins serving in the temple. So Jephthah's daughter became also. The uniqueness about that situation was, it was not an oath the girl has taken, the father has taken. So the girl graciously submitted to that. And of course the Jewish law requires that. The father has the final authority upon the oath to be taken. Usually the parents won't take, a girl will take. The day the father will hear about it, he has to say either yes or no. But in this case the father had. So the daughter said, you have made that, then I will submit myself to that. So a gracious daughter who submits to the will of the father. What a gracious, great example that is. Yes. In 1 Corinthians 7 we have this statement that If a father decides that his virgin need not to be married, he is doing a good thing. If he marries them, not committing sin. So it's for the father to decide this issue whether a daughter need to be married or not. Of course, all loving father would do that which is best for the child. They will sit down and talk about it. If the father thinks that daughter, it's better for you not to marry because of health reason or some other reason, then they will have a dialogue and they will convince the daughter. It will not be forced upon. But in this case, because of the situation, the daughter, I think, has graciously submitted.
My question is,
Yeah.
he has caught up between two situations. One
Yeah.
is he has to break his vow, or the other side, give a human sacrifice, which is not granted. So why he has to, I believe that he should have given more value to the life of a person than the word that he has given.
Because a human sacrifice was not permitted
Yeah, so,
in Israel.
but he did that. So
He didn't sacrifice her. Why you come to the conclusion that sacrifice? There's no statement. Simply said, he did what he said. The word of killing or anything is not used there at all. Actually, it's interesting. The oath that he has taken could be translated with an either or. He said that whatever, take that passage, whatever greets me when I reach home, it shall be the Lord's or it shall be a sacrifice unto him. It could be translated like that.
that's in Judges.
Yeah, it's in Judges.
11. 29 or 34.
Verse 30, then Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed deliver the people of Ammon into my hands, then it will be that whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the people of Ammon, shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it up as a burnt.
Yeah, that's it. It shall surely be the Lord's. That and could be translated, or I will offer it up for a burnt offering. That means if it's something that can be offered as a burnt offering, I will offer it. But if it is something that cannot be offered as a burnt offering, then I will give it to the Lord in whatever way the law permits. Suppose it is a donkey that comes, meats, then donkey cannot be offered as sacrifice, but the donkey can be sold and the money can be given. So whatever may be, So it shall be the Lord's and or. So here it is and, it could be translated or, and the problem will be over.
But then what is so great in that sacrifice, this vow?
Well, that the Jewish people all take great oath. That's a great vow. If he has, suppose it was a bull that came, he will offer it a sacrifice. It is the daughter came, so it cannot be sacrificed, but the Lord gave the daughter to the Lord's service. That's not a simple thing. He has only one daughter. Means his generation going to come. Stop there. Every man wants to see his generation continue. But that his family is going to be end there. Because she is not going to be given in marriage.
So 39, how will we interpret? 39?
Because it's or no. So
Yeah.
given to the people.
39 simply says that, and it came to pass at the end of the 2 months that she returned unto her father, who did with her according to the vow. It doesn't say that he killed her. And simply says, and she knew no man. Means she was never given in marriage. She remained a virgin for all her life and served the Lord.
And the mourning happened every year.
Yes, because it was a great sacrifice for a woman who wants to get married and establish a family not to do that. So she is such a classic example in submitting to the oath to the father when that oath is diametrically opposed to her personal desire. So she became a great example for everybody to say, look at Jephthah's daughter. What an obedient girl she is. So, they wept for her. If she was offered a sacrifice, why they have to weep for her virginity? Sacrifice and virginity, what has anything to do with? Marriage and virginity has something to do with, right? But sacrifice and virginity has nothing to do with. So the other way to understand it is better, because in Israel never a human sacrifice is taken. It's so strictly prohibited. You shall not allow your children to pass through fire. And then God is going to accept this? Oh no, definitely not. It's never. It's never.
In fact, the footnotes of KJV says that the translator's note, that it can be or.
It can, grammatically it can be or, because I have written a paper on that passage for research. Grammatically it can, and or. Yes. And I think that theologically it must be translated that way. Otherwise we have a problem with theology. That God accepted human sacrifice. Which is a great mistake. The ethics of conscience. The ethics of conscience. Yeah, sure.
But there are various situations, like, for example, in society killing.
Thank you, Maharaj. You can take this away.
Police, judges, etc., they kill. Capital punishment.
Yes.
So, but whereas absolute God's law says, okay, we should not kill. So there we see, for the social good, the capital punishment is accepted.
Yes.
So where, because people used to say this one, when there are two evils are there, choose a lesser evil.
No. That principle never holds. No, that ethics is wrong. We have never the choice of choosing a lesser evil. We have no choice of choosing evil. Period.
Society,
no, that's not that. The principle is we need to understand. I think Romans chapter 13, if you understand, and our problem will be over. Romans chapter 13. That has the answer to all these questions. Romans chapter 13. Romans chapter 13 needs to be understood very carefully. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power resists the ordinance of God, and that they resist shall receive themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, thou shalt have praise of the same. Then look at verse 4. For the ruler is the minister of God to thee for good. If you do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. The government is given the sword in its hand to chop it off the head of the evildoers. That's what has taken place all through the Old Testament and the New Testament. The governments chopping off the heads for God. If you do that which is evil, be afraid. For he, the ruler, beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath, that is God's wrath, upon him who is doing evil. When God permitted, in Genesis chapter 9, God gave the principle, he that sheddeth man's blood, his blood shall be shed by man. God, instead of directly revenging the crime, God gave this privilege into the hand of man to execute that. So for the excesses and the evils of man, this execution is in the hand of human being. Now the human government is the arrangement. The capital punishment is a system. So everyone who commits the blood unnecessarily, the court of law has to hear the case, and if it can be proved that he has shed the blood knowingly, then his blood has to be shed by the government. The government decides whether the head has to be chopped off, or it has to be hanged, or he must be shot, or put on the electrical chair, or in the gas chamber, whatever methods. So that's what we see in all these cases.
So can the same thing holds good for say somebody comes to kill me for my self-defense?
Yes, you can defend yourself. You can defend your wife or children. You can use minimum force that is necessary to protect your wife and children. If that minimum force is equal to killing, you can do that. That's
where do we take that authority from? Where do we take that?
From the Bible itself. From the Bible itself.
And this principle is to the government.
Yeah, this principle is to the government, but there are many other Old Testament passages which so clearly tells that self-defense.
Here is the confusion.
Yeah.
The confusion is, earlier you said, okay, because the actions of the people cannot be taken, because whether that is right or not.
Yeah, because the Bible has to be the Bible has to be the book to guarantee, that one. So you have to study the Bible and see what does the Bible say about self-defense. That question has to be studied by every person. And in my study, I have come to conclusion that as a husband, it is my duty to protect my wife and children. They are given under my custody. I am responsible to protect my wife and children. And that protection comes, it's never in hatred for the other person, but as a duty of protecting my wife and children. I can do that. The government law, all governments permit it. All governments permit it. The Bible also permits the same thing. So if some man came and get hold of your daughter or wife, then you could of course kneel down and close your eyes and say that, Lord, that's one thing, but it always does not work. But you will run to the kitchen, and maybe there may be a rusted knife. You may have never done it. You don't have the strength to do it, the mental courage to do it, but the love for your wife sometimes give you that strength. And you are not violating any. That's why they say that if a thief robs in the night and if you beat him and he dies, there is no case. But if the daybreaks come in, he dies, you are responsible, because you don't have to kill a thief, because he is only robbing some material thing, right? There is no justification in killing a person because he is robbing something. But if it happens in the night, Bible says there is no case. No case. So Bible is very clear on all these things. So that's why in the war, in the army, people go, they shoot the enemies. The war ethics in the Bible is different. You study about the war ethics. The soldiers who kill each other, they are not ever arrested for killing a person. No. Because it's not in personal hatred, you know. You are not shooting a Pakistani because you hate him personally, but it's a national enemy. National enemy. So these things are all perfectly in our Krishna ethics. So Romans chapter 13 is a very valid passage, you know.
Does that validate licensed armament in the hands of civilians?
Well, that's a question that determined by various things. Like in India, should every Indian citizen be given a gun to protect himself? No, we don't need to. We don't need to. But in America it is, because there was a situation when the people from England migrated to America, and the American Indians, for Red Indians, used to attack them in the night and daytime, and they had very deadly poisoned arrows and all that, and so government not only gave them guns, but it became their fundamental right to defend their wife and children. So every American was given, as a matter of their fundamental right, to possess arms. Now government wants to take it away, but they say that it's in the but it's in the Constitution as one of the fundamental rights. To amend it, it's not very easy. So there is a contextual situation where that was required. But in India, well, we really don't need a gun to protect ourselves. You know. But it's nice to have something to protect yourself. You know. We Christians, we pray to God. You know, I always pray that Lord never bring a situation in my life. You know, I have to use force upon a man, even to defend my family. But if that's what I have to do to defend my wife, I have to do it. You know, because it's my duty to protect my wife. She's my wife. I'm the head. I am to lead her, I have to protect her, I have to provide for her, I have to love her, care for her, cherish her. It's all my duty. So far never came a situation where I have to use any weapon or anything, you know. Yeah. Or my children, you know. Sometimes, yes, these days it's very difficult. I even, you know, I don't want to say it, but even I've tempted to say often that all parents should teach their daughters judo or karate or some for self-defense. You know, because these days anybody can get hold of it just to get away from it. So some knowledge of some basic martial art will be useful, not to hurt others, but to defend ourselves. But then I don't want anybody to say that Abraham Thomas is going around and these days advocating, saying that, you know, teach your daughters judo and karate. But it's very dangerous days we are living in. You know. See the story of that Esther, you know, sad. I mean, she was foolish. It was foolishness for her to, you know, to go with that man on the bike, you know. I just cannot understand why she chose to do that. What were you going to say?
I was just saying only that what you said, to be able to physically defend yourself, but I've also found that very often girls are not alert about their surroundings. Busy on the phone, busy talking to friends, they venture into isolated areas without thinking about what's happening around them. A lot of times alertness can prevent, you'll know who is walking beside you or who is looking at you, those kind of things.
Yeah, you are right. One of the problem is that, you know, in God's ordinance, women ought to be at home. I'm not against women working or anything, so don't misunderstand me. I'm not for or either. You know, that's certain situations in family and financial constraint and so many things will determine it, you know, so I'm aware. But generally I think that women should stay home. Their brothers, their parents should protect them, men. Men should protect women. Women should not be allowed to go into the world so freely, openly. Where should she go? In the dark, in the night, 10 o'clock walking in the street. She should be home. If she wants to go home in the evening, take her father with or brother with her, somebody, go with them. If they want to go to the work, situation comes, do it at a good daytime. Go 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, back home 5 o'clock. Don't take a second job and all that. I think we need to be, the biblical arrangement is the best. Bible never exposes a woman to a dangerous situation. There was only one woman who went away to meet the people of the ladies of the town, and she suffered for it. The daughter of Jacob. That was sad. Yeah? Teaching is a good job for ladies. I'm not against it. It's nice, you can teach your children also. Teaching job usually is not late night, early morning, you come afternoon home. Something wrong. If you have to work. There will be situations where, somebody has to work, not every husband is having a good job and all. So there are some constraints sometimes, do some part-time job or something, or learn to be satisfied with the little and all. I know in the city of Bombay it will be very difficult for, somebody, so I'm not making, the Bible does not say women should not work, because the Bible women worked. Ruth worked in the field, right? When Ruth went out, there were women working in the field. That was kind of job that was available. So you cannot say that when the Bible did not work. No, they used to work. But leaving one's family and then and going away, endangering oneself in a situation where it is so dangerous and all that is not wise. It's not wise. If you have to do that, I said that maybe you need to know something about that, or something, to protect yourself. Don't endanger yourself in situations. Yes. I think parents have to teach the children how to survive in society. It's very difficult to survive in the society. India is not a place where women are respected and honored, Forgive me, not that, it's true that women still are not safe in society. They are not safe in the roads, they are not safe in the buses, they are not safe in the, from all the reports that we get. Men are never raped, women are always here and there. Why? So that means that women are not safe in our society, they are not respected. We speak loud about respecting women and all, but women are respected. So we need to, the Christian ethics, respect women. Yes. The Bible made the arrangement that man should provide for the home. Isn't that good? Men need not go in the hot sun work. Let men go and work. Bring, necessities. Women take care of the children, the family, outside. That's right place. Women are allowed, women are provided for, women are cared for. Yes. But many times women have to go and work and provide for their husband and children. Because when you're drunkard, lazy, all kinds of situations. No, you never work to provide for your husband and family. If you work it through situations where, the additional income for maybe children's education or something, that sort of. The brother has to earn by husband. If a husband is not able to earn the bread for the family, why is he married? This goes as. It's so easy for any man to make a living in this world, and there's plenty of job everywhere. You just go out with some peanuts, you can come in the home with a cup of 100 rupees in your hand, buy rice and some fish, some masala, something. In this world there's plenty of job. Yes. Okay, it's 9 o'clock, so I'll stop. I wanted to complete my ethics today. Little more left, and God willing, next week we will start with sociology. Yes.